Hello again and welcome to another video. Today's video is entitled Apostasy-The True Scriptural Meaning. The governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses have branded any who scripturally speak out against them as apostates. The reasoning from the Scriptures book was first released in 1985. Almost 38 years ago. On pages 35 to 37, it gives a commentary on apostasy. According to them, the definition of apostasy is abandoning or deserting the worship and service of God, actually a rebellion against Jehovah God. Correct. Some apostates profess to know and serve God, but reject teachings or requirements set out in His Word. Correct. Others claim to believe the Bible, but reject Jehovah's organization. False. That totally unscriptural statement, which I will prove categorically from the Bible in a moment, has caused immeasurable suffering and anguish with devastating, far-reaching consequences upon those who have been unjustifiably stigmatized as being an apostate, rendering such ones as spiritual lepers. Disgraceful. Those who have branded someone as being an apostate for scripturally speaking out against the governing body have put their heads squarely and firmly on the chopping block with Jehovah, as Matthew 5:21 and 22 clearly states. Let's read Jesus' words together. That's Matthew 5, verses 21 and 22. Matthew 5:21 and 22. It reads there, it says, "You heard that it was said to those of ancient times, 'You must not murder,' but whoever commits a murder will be accountable to the court of justice. However, I say to you that everyone who continues wrathful with his brother will be accountable to the court of justice, but whoever addresses his brother with an unspeakable word of contempt will be accountable to the Supreme Court, whereas whoever says, 'You despicable fool,' will be liable to the fiery Gehenna." Jesus also stated this at Matthew 7:1 and 2. So over a few pages, Matthew 7:1 and 2 reads there, it says, "Stop judging that you may not be judged. For with what judgment you are judging, you will be judged. And with the measure that you are measuring out, they will measure out to you." In a spiritual context, branding someone with no justification as an apostate is as bad as labeling someone as a pedophile. Let's get Jehovah's word on the matter to clear up once and for all what the clear, true definition of an apostate really is. The governing body have deliberately muddied the waters as to what constitutes an apostate, because they're apostates. But God's word makes it crystal clear, exposing them for what they truly are: vile. Let's let Jesus instruct us again at Matthew 7, verses 15 to 20. So we're still in Matthew, so let's just read verses 15 to 20. It says there, it says, "Be on the watch for the false prophets that come to you in sheep's covering, but inside they are ravenous wolves. By their fruits you will recognize them. Never do people gather grapes from thorns or figs from thistles, do they? Likewise, every good tree produces fine fruit, but every rotten tree produces worthless fruit. A good tree cannot bear worthless fruit, neither can a rotten tree produce fine fruit. Every tree not producing fine fruit gets cut down and thrown into the fire. Really, then, by their fruits you will recognize those men. There are many examples of apostasy in the Bible. The vast majority of the kings who ruled Israel and Judah turned apostate. For example, Saul in 1 Samuel 15 verse 11 and chapter 28 verses 6 and 7. Solomon, 1 Kings 11, 1 to 11, and several others who I mentioned in a previous video entitled Apostasy Past and Present. Let's read about Hymenaeus and Philetus's apostasy at 2 Timothy 2 verses 16 to 19. So that's 2 Timothy 2 verses 16 to 19. So it reads there, reading from verse 16, it says, "But shun empty speeches that violate what is holy, for they will advance to more and more ungodliness, and their word will spread like gangrene. Hymenaeus and Philetus are of that number. These very men have deviated from the truth, saying that the resurrection has already occurred, and they are subverting the faith of some. So 19, reads, "For all that, the solid foundation of God stays standing, having this seal: Jehovah knows those who belong to him, and let everyone naming the name of Jehovah renounce unrighteousness." Their act of apostasy was declaring to everyone that the resurrection had already occurred. Totally unscriptural. The resurrection of those who will live in heaven will happen just before Armageddon. Let's turn, please, to 1 Thessalonians 4, 16 and 17 to confirm that. That's 1 Thessalonians 4, 16 and 17. So that's just back a few pages. So it reads there, it says, "Because the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a commanding call, with an archangel's voice, and with God's trumpet. And those who are dead in union with Christ will rise first. Afterward, we, the living who are surviving, will, together with them, be caught away in clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we shall always be with the Lord. Consequently, keep comforting one another with these words." Those who are going to be resurrected on the earth, so that's numbering into the billions, will be resurrected after Armageddon, during Christ's 1,000-year reign. Proof of that is what Lazarus' sister Martha and Jesus himself said at John 11, verses 23 to 27. So the whole of John 11 is dealing with when Jesus resurrected Lazarus. So this is the conversation between Jesus and Martha just before Jesus resurrected Lazarus. So John 11, reading from verse 23. So Jesus said to her, that's Martha, "Your brother will rise." Martha said to him, "I know he will rise in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. He that exercises faith in me, even though he dies, will come to life. And everyone that is living and exercises faith in me will never die at all. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord. I have believed that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one coming into the world." By Hymenaeus in Philetus saying that the resurrection had already occurred was completely unscriptural, totally going against Jehovah's laws and principles. That's what apostasy is, pure and simple. By the governing body saying to trust them, to trust the organization, and faithful slave amounts to exactly the same thing, is totally unscriptural and goes totally against God's laws and principles. Let's turn together to prove that at Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. That's Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. So it reads there, it says, "Trust in Jehovah with all your heart, and do not lean upon your own understanding. In all your ways take notice of him, and he himself will make your path straight." Let's now read Jeremiah 17, verses 5 and 6. That's Jeremiah 17. Verses 5 and 6. It reads there, very clear. "This is what Jehovah has said. Cursed is the able-bodied man who puts his trust in earthling man and actually makes flesh his arm, and whose heart turns away from Jehovah himself." No exceptions, no exemptions. And he'll certainly become like a solitary tree in the desert plain and will not see when good comes, but he must reside in parched places in the wilderness, in a salt country that is not inhabited. Jeremiah lived at a time of kings and priests, and there was a number of them. Jehovah was saying to Jeremiah, and to extension us, don't even trust them. The governing body say, trust us. That's apostasy, pure and simple. They tick all the boxes. Apostates are evil, and the governing body are evil with a capital E. Thank you very much for watching. Please have a prayerful think about that. All the very best. Bye.